playing.
Where do those lines draw? Because my father's misusing the mail system and using people.
I love.
So my father's never stopped.
You guys are the greatest.
I mean, he doesn't have the ability to kill anybody, but he's still trying to control.
I see your side as well.
Other people and control his family.
That's what we do here. We get opinionated.
Wow. And Greg, give us some insight into that.
I love it.
Yeah, I was going to say that I got my first awareness of how many love letters come into persons that have committed homicides, and that was with the Menendez brothers. And they because I had to interview both of them for trial, and they were getting at least 20, 30, 40 letters a week. It was amazing how many people were writing to them. Now, these were young, they at the time they were in their 20s. They were young, good-looking young men. But that also happens with some of these killers will say they want a pen pal. And so they will put their name out there. So you don't know how it really gets started, whether the female initiates it or not. But I have a whole PowerPoint on 20, I think it is, killers that had married in prison, had started a relationship by mail and actually got married. One of the
Brooke,
cases that I did, Henry Wallace, married the nurse that had been in the jail when
Sharon,
he was first
I love that
arrested.
screen name. It's good to see you here too.
And they got married. He got married right next to the chapel was right next to the execution room. So that was rather interesting. So
he's obviously
I was just going to say that happens. Everything that Gary says, I don't know how many get into how expanded the relationships get, but I certainly knew. In fact, the Menendez brothers, Lyle was married twice. He got married, divorced, and married again while he was in prison. And Eric has been married for a fairly long length of time. So it happens.
Interesting. Greg, what you dovetail into that thought?
Well, what amazes me is not only do they allow these people to get married, but also to have conjugal visits.
Got you, homie.
Where during their defense, when they were first prosecuted, during their defense.
So the Heart Says Lonely Hunter says, "Hey Bryan, just want to say thanks for another great live. I have to jump off here, but I'll rewatch the rest later. You're doing great. Enjoy your channel. Well, thank you for joining us. I hope you have a great night. Thanks for joining us for a little while here, and being very kind and saying that you had to leave. You didn't have to do that, but that was great. Thank you. Have a great night. Thank you, and please do watch the replay. That's what they're there for.
They may have suggested they could not control themselves, but now
you guys are the best.
Now in
chat.
an incarcerated situation, all of a sudden they can control themselves. I love it. Conjugal visit, and they can act and behave normally, if you will. And it just further attests to, I think, the selection, the choice aspect of when and where and with whom they decide to commit their crimes with. But it amazes me that it attracts a certain element and a group of
I did hit that the wrong
category classification.
And said, "I got you, homie."
Women most of the time that
come on, man,
is attracted to these individuals, and from the offender's perspective, it allows them to continue their fantasy and exact that fantasy in their own area of control. It just amazes me, just as a normal human being, and I'm far from normal anymore, having been in this business far too long. But some things just can never make sense to me.
Right. Well, I think we should add to this that it also says something about the compartmentalization process in the killers, because some of them have an incredible misogyny. Couldn't care less about the life of a woman out in the world, but will develop a strange, a perfectly healthy relationship with a woman who is writing to them in prison or coming to visit them, where they would never harm a hair on that woman's head. And so that it says something about the splitting mechanism you might see where women are seen as either kind of angelic or objectified completely. And that mechanism is so strange. I mean, when you hear a specific offender talk about it, it really floors you. For example, the serial killer David Parker Ray, who had $100,000 torture chamber and trailer, with a gynecological chair in the center.
That was in Arizona, I believe. That was crazy, and he was filming it. And he was drugging all these women,
which was used to torture women and so forth. He tortured a woman horribly for a very long time, and came to like her because she had characteristics of the kind of women he idealized. And then when he was finished torturing her, he said, "If I had known you were that kind of woman, I wouldn't have tortured you." And so you have to kind of understand that compartmentalization. And Kerri, I think in your own life, where you would have seen it, is the way that your father would have been with your mother versus or yourself, actually, versus
it was
the
a
way
family.
you would have
I think
been
you're
with the
right.
victim, and probably sometimes even hours apart or days apart. And
it was
it's an interesting thing to think about. Who was the prototype for the woman that they?
Here, hang on, I'll pull them up. Give me a second. I don't know if you guys can see this. Let me see. Oh, it's too small. Hang on. Let me go. I don't know how to. There we go. I don't know if you guys can see that or not. So BTK was actually a guy first. Can you increase the size? I don't know how to do it. I have to look that up so I can make this larger. But it was a male first, then a female, then another male, then a female. It's almost like he was alternating there. Then he went female, male, female, female, and then the rest of them all the way through were female up until 1991, and that was the last one. Interesting. Bottom right. My right. Nope. I'll have to figure it out. I got to get it so I can scroll and zoom in a little bit. But yeah, it was male, female, male, female. So he alternated. Then he went to female, male, and then the rest of them were all female. It's strange. The guy first. It's strange. All right, we'll keep playing through this video. I thought he killed a family, from what I remember.
Idealize, and who's the prototype for the woman that they
it was
hate. And sometimes they're the same person.
Yes,
that's the most interesting thing of all.
We have,
and so I think to understand hybristophilia, you have to see both sides of it. So we talked about the personality of the person attracted to them, but it's also interesting to think about the splitting and fragmentation in the offender that allows them to have those attractions. So, Kerri, did you see that fragmentation in your father? A kind of a misogyny on the one hand, and sort of idealizing women on the other.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So with my father, I mean, Dr. Mercado and I were talking about in Dr. Ramson's book. One of my dad's early fascinations was with Anne. What was Anne? The Mickey Mouse girl. And
Annette Funicello.
Good point out. Good catch there. They were all. It was a family, and I thought that his first one was a family, because when he did his confession, he talked about that. I'll bring it back up really quick. So what Kristen's talking about is the 4 victims here. Yeah, I totally caught that just as I closed it. You were so right on that. Yeah. So his first 4 kills was a family. Yeah, allegedly like BK. You're so right on that. So I caught that the last.
Funicello. So my dad talks about his fascination with her being kind of like his ideal hot woman. We know my dad was pretty immature with women. Like he had a hard time in high school, similar to Kohberger. Like getting maybe overly attached emotionally, but not really being able to socially pull off dating. I know he was brokenhearted by some girl in high school. With my mom, my father just got back from the military in 1970. I think he was still even in his Air Force uniform when he met my mom, so we met her at our family church. My mom already knew his family, his parents, his brothers. They knew my mom's family. They dated only for 9 months and got married. But I think in hindsight, I wonder, did he love bomb my mom, or did he truly like really love my mom? You know, I mean, he was like over the top, took her to movies, took her to dates, cleaned the kitchen for her. He was like a good husband if you remove the BTK. Like, I mean, he looked like an upstanding citizen, an upstanding husband, bend over backward for my mom. But then there's these times, like we've talked about before on here, where a little bit of the BTK came through. So in 95, we were on a vacation in Jackson Hole, Wyoming.
Yes. Kristen, you're connecting the dots
And
tonight.
we were walking around looking at the Tetons. And my mom's a little bit klutzy like I am. And she fell a little bit down a path and like twisted her ankle and scraped up her knee. So she's bleeding and she's hurt and she's in pain.
Good call
and
out.
My dad just full flips out, like domestic abuser all of a sudden, angry at her for getting hurt, like angry at her.
Really good point out.
Interrupting his vacation and his special day of seeing
Aria's in the house.
So my brother and I are like trying to help her.
I got you, homie.
The thing is, again, of course, I'm over here talking in hindsight. What it's been, almost 30 years. But the ranger, the badge, he didn't like my dad. It was like he knew right away my dad wasn't a good person, and he got literally physically between my mom and me and my dad, and made my dad go outside. Now, in hindsight, I go back and I think that badge knew something about my dad that the rest of us didn't. You know, like the ranger didn't know what he had on his hands. Like, I'm sure he thought he had some kind of domestic violence situation. Maybe that's what he did have on his hands. But he literally like sent my dad outside to calm down while we tended to my mom. So then my dad felt really bad for like flipping out on all of us. So then he went over the top and took us to a really nice lunch that we wouldn't normally do because of the expense, because it's something my mom would like. And then the rest of the vacation we were like in Yellowstone and river rafting with my dad, stuff my mom didn't really do. But my mom basically spent the rest of the vacation resting at the hotel reading. And at the time I was only like 18 or 16 something. And I thought my mom was just being my mom and chilling and having a quiet vacation. And then about 7 years ago, when I started writing, I called her and talked to her about this whole thing. And she said, no, your dad ruined my vacation because of being, a brute.
I agree.
So when I've talked before about him, like these 2 times he tried to strangle my brother, and the time he chased me down the hall,
MRG,
I thought he was going to kill me. There were these moments, these flashes. And, now in hindsight, now I wonder, is it seeing a woman bleed? Because like anytime my mom or I got hurt, he would flip out and he would be mad, like that he had to stop whatever he was doing to take care of us.
Oh, excuse me, guys.
It's not a natural reaction to your child or your wife being injured. And I don't know what that is. Maybe you guys do.
Great.
But it was like he was flipping out, seeing a woman that he
good points
was close to injured, and it was like he couldn't handle it.
Fascinating. So yeah, what are the correlating personality traits now, right? What are we seeing in this?
It's funny that Kristen says this. It's like Richard Kuklinski. He was the Iceman. He was a family man. He went out and did these mob hits and these murders, and then he would go home to his family and play with them during Christmas and have birthday parties, and he would leave during there was one account that I was watching, he was talking about on his interview. He said that he got called for a hit, went out, he was literally at the Christmas tree putting toys together for his kids. He got called for a hit, took care of someone, came back and started putting the toy together, and he was more angry that he couldn't get the toy together from his kid than how it was during the hit job. It's just sick person.
Potential individual who Gary nailed and nailed him. Coop, you guys nailed him before they caught him. And I mean, as a mass murderer on his way, right? I mean, I think we're still all of the same opinion. He was on his way.
Opinion? Did he say opinionated idiot?
Very, very problematic for society. But thank goodness they've got him right now. That said, he's allegedly, the problem here. But let's talk about the chameleon aspects of these personalities. And, I know that, Greg, you teach constantly, and Dean, about the 3 lives that we live: public, private, and our secret life. Let's kind of focus. How do these guys manipulate their public persona so well that it masks that private persona? So, Anne, we'll start with you, ladies first, and if we'll just kind of maybe keep everybody, a couple of minutes, and that way everybody can chime in. Okay.
Well, I'm interested in, since we're looking at 2 separate, in a way, persons that have murdered, that they had multiple
Night, Heather. Have a good
victims.
night. Thank you for hanging out.
That is really quite unique. We haven't talked too much about that. And where does that come from? The idea, people could think about, I could kill, I guess. I mean, I've certainly talked to enough.
It's a good point, Aria.
To take on 2,
yes,
3,
I've
4, and certainly in Brian's case, 4.
That's where I saw the interviews.
BTK's case, I think the initial one had multiple victims, is really rather, I think that's rather unique. I know that there are cases that I've seen, and all of you have seen, of 2. But when it gets in, and unless it's a gang type thing or a mass shooting, but where does the idea to take on multiple victims come from? Why isn't one? That's what makes you always, I think, wonder if there had been others before. Was there some practicing? Usually in cases we get the practicing, and it can be on animals or it can be other kinds of things, and not necessarily killing, but to attack a victim of some kind. And then it moves up. Certainly with rape murder, they rape and then it escalates. So in both of these cases, it looks like the initial crime was multiple victims. So what kind of a personality? It's not necessarily a personality, but thinking patterns. I'm always hoping that we can move beyond behavior and get to the cognitive level, the cognitive thinking that goes on in the planning. And where I think we're going to have payoff on this, and one of the projects that we're doing,
my eyes have been a little weird today.
The social media posts that happen,
been like
and you can have access to.
Like strained, I'll be good. I'm good.
Okay.
I can do another hour.
Who wants to go next?
Let's. I just said that because we got about another hour in the video, so we're about the halfway mark right now.
I wonder a little bit with both offenders
Nice.
in this case, how much they initially expected and anticipated or planned for.
So we'll do one more hour.
Than one.
11:30 Eastern Standard Time. One more hour.
I think in many cases they make that initial step to get involved, and then all of a sudden they're confronted now with more than one, more than 2.
I'm actually off until Thursday, Dr. Bob. I'm on a staycation right now.
Now
I'm good. I'm good.
3 or 4.
I'll get up and go to the gym
and I've
tomorrow.
been successful with the first
And I got to
one or
stream
2,
tomorrow night too.
or I've been successful in controlling all of them initially. I think
Tomorrow night show, I'll let everybody know we're going to get into touch DNA, and we're going to get into circumstantial evidence, and then we're going to compare the two. We're going to talk about Bryan Kohberger's life behind bars right now, what it's like for him, and we can go through all that. I have a nice presentation for tomorrow's show, so you guys aren't going to want to miss that.
I remember correctly, Mr. Rader didn't anticipate the whole family was going to be there. In fact, they weren't. He had a couple of the kids that weren't.
No visual snow.
And
we're going to do Dama on Tuesday.
I'm not convinced yet that he intended on all 4 victims. I think that he was more fixated on 1 or 2 to begin with.
I don't have a migraine. It's just my eyes.
While he was there, he ran into that situation.
I didn't do anything today. I went out. My mom came by for a little while. We had lunch together. We hung out for a little bit. She left, and then literally I just didn't feel like doing much. I went to Target and bought a hamper today. Oh, I know what I wanted to do. So while I was over at Target, I wanted to show you guys something. My eyes are they feel strained. But I wanted to show you guys this. Let me email it to this. Let's do this. Because I stopped by Walmart to see if they had something there. I was going to save it for tomorrow, but now that it came to my mind, I don't like to keep things when they come to my mind because I'll forget. Hang on one second. Let me bring this up. I'm just waiting for this email to come through. Oh, excuse me. So I went to Walmart today and I moseyed into, it's just, I've been in front of the computer all day, so I think my eyes are just strained. I moseyed into the knife section. And what I wanted to point out was now that's not a K-bar, but they do sell K-bar like knives. And I do know this. If you go to the Walmart website, they do sell K-bar knives on the Walmart website. What I tried to do was put in Pullman, Washington as my zip code. This is a picture I took today, but I tried to put in the zip code for Pullman on the Walmart website to see if K-bars would come up. They do not come up, but Walmart does sell them and ship them. And I wanted to walk in and see if they had a K-bar at my local Walmart. They don't. They have something that's very similar to a K-bar. They have a lot of fixed blade knives. This would be very similar right here too, this buck style knife. But this, I almost freaked out when I walked in because I saw this one with the sheath right away. And I was like, holy shit, that's the knife. But it's not a K-bar, but it could be, very similar. It doesn't have the US Marine Corps sheath, but he might've bought that sheath before, and kind of like, Drunk Turkeys were saying he could be trying to play off this kind of military angle, like someone from the military did it. But I thought this was very interesting and I wanted to show that to you guys. But they look too short too. So let's pull up this again and we'll keep playing through.
And had to take care of it and adapt because he didn't expect or anticipate it. And which may have contributed to
it's pretty crazy.
The fact that he left evidence because he wasn't anticipating those last 1 or 2 victims. And it disorganized his thought process.
Caught my attention really quick. I was like, wow.
The level of confidence that he
I was just curious. And I literally would have died if I walked in. It was like the same exact K-bar that they think it is. I would have freaked out. But they do sell K-bar through Walmart. You can get them.
So I think that has
that's
something.
What I was wondering if I walked into Pullman or I walked into Moscow Walmart, would they have K-bars in there? And that's what I was trying to look on the website, but I couldn't find anything
To do with it. But from a natural perspective, if I can do one, I can do two.
They sell ammo
feel fantastic. If I can be successful at more than that, think what it does to their level of confidence and self-esteem.
Dean, thoughts?
I think that to Greg's point, to me, what's fascinating is that if the goal was to do, we can't say on Bryan's case because he was caught, but at least in
I thought I had a
Dennis's case, we don't see him repeating that ever again.
Pull it up on the screen.
So he did it once, the first time, at least that we know of. He did 4. But everyone after that was single. It was a single somebody alone, or there was the one. I take that back. There was the one where I think the brother was at the residence and he shot. But I mean, as far as him actively seeking out multiples to do, it doesn't appear, at least, that was what he was doing. And he spent an awful lot of time, from everything I've been able to read and research, preparing for these. He spent a lot of afternoons driving neighborhoods, checking out things,
Not
really
a problem.
making sure.
Have a good night.
We have that information.
Thanks for stopping by.
In Dennis's case, we don't in Bryan's. We don't know what he would have done from here out. But I think Greg makes an excellent point on
that. Kerri?
Yes. So with my father, we believe it was just the 10 murders because he kept memorabilia underneath our floorboards in our hall. So the police told us that there would have been memorabilia from other victims, driver's license, jewelry. There would have been records. He kept records of everyone he stalked, like meticulous Nazi records in his BTK binders at work.
That's crazy.
So as far as we know, it's just the 10. So he did start out in 74 with 4, but he didn't go, like you said, he didn't go into that house planning on 4. He didn't know the father was going to be home, Mr. Otero. He thought he was at work. He really was initially after Julie Otero, the mom, and potentially, if there's some debate about, my father mentions the 2 children, he actually wanted to ambush them in the garage and take them in his car to one of his silos. It was a fantasy of his to have this like murder silo. There's also talk about he was interested in the middle school, high school daughter that was not home. The 3 oldest children were already at school. So in my father's case, he's going in to get the oldest adult, maybe some of the children. He runs into another male and he has to improvise, is one of my father's words. So after the Oteros did, he said it was easier to get the same hit and fantasy and relief, as Dr. Mercado and Dr. Ann talk about, from just one. And it was easier always to murder a woman. Hello. And never deal with a man again. He didn't want to have.
Don't worry, we're going to be on about another.
So in the second killing,
hour,
he was waiting in a house.
I go to 11:30 Eastern Standard Time.
and Catherine Bright, she was like 21. She came home with her younger brother who was 19. So he tied them both up, but Kevin Bright got away from the ties, and then they got into a battle with my father's gun, 2 guns, and Kevin was shot but survived. He's the only guy to survive BTK. And then after that,
brother of his sister died, right?
Yeah, Catherine 100%. Bright died. But the whole thing got away from my father, is how he puts it, because Kevin almost got the gun and almost killed my dad. We will stream another hour.
I'm gonna hang out.
So my dad shot Kevin twice. Well, Catherine was trying to get out of her binds, and then my dad thought Kevin was dead, but Kevin ran out of the house.
3,000 people watching.
So my dad freaked out, thinking that this was just 2 months after Otero's.
That'd be
so
great.
In the Otero's, my dad claims he was completely in control of this crime scene for 4 or 5 hours in the Otero's house, basically left to do whatever he wanted to do in the Otero's. And now 2 months later, everything's completely out of control. And he didn't get to do his fantasy with Catherine. He stabbed her several times to end it. That's the only time my father ever did anything other than strangling. He said he didn't like it. My father was covered basically head to toe in blood, runs out of this house next to the WSU campus where my father's going to school, gets in his car, and he drove out into the country stripped everything off, then buried it in the chicken coop at my grandparents' house, at his parents' house, because it was like a place comfortable with him. And so he buried everything in the sawdust, like the guns and the knife and the clothes. And then he went back later and got everything and destroyed it in varying places. And so he said his suede shoes were soaked in blood. So you're talking about his car would have been soaked, his clothes. The weapons were hid at his parents' house. There was a sketch from Kevin Bright of my father, and supposedly my father had the watch on that he stole from Mr. Otero 2 months before. But how much of that was known at the time in 74 by the police? How much of that was public? The sketches don't, in hindsight, the sketches kind of look like my father, but I just put the watch thing together in hindsight many years later. You know, my father filling in these gaps. As we're talking about tonight, it's hard to compare Kohberger to my dad in some ways because we've got 50 years of information or more on my father. You know, we're just trying to fill in these little pieces with Kohberger, and in time it will come, but we're very limited right now.
Interesting, Kerri. And then I didn't mean to interrupt. I apologize. But I want to give Dr. Bricado a chance to weigh in here. And then let's, to your point a second ago.
If you guys don't know, and I don't know if anybody knows, if you're just new coming into the stream, I actually reached out to Kerri this afternoon. I did not think that I was going to get, I didn't think I was going to get any type of response from her. She actually wrote me back. She was very kind. I asked her if she wanted to come on the show for about an hour and just talk about her dad and Kohberger. And she's in the middle of finishing up her book, so she's unable to join, but she said that she can't join at this time. You know, it might just be a nice way of saying I'm not interested, but, you know, maybe I'll re-engage her once her book is finished and have her on here and try to get her on the show. I am going to keep reaching out to other guests as well. I'm thinking about reaching out to Chris McDonough and trying to see if I can get him on the channel. He's actually the host that's on this channel here. So I'm going to end up, you know, writing him. And what's the worst that people can say? No, you know, and then you just keep trying and trying and trying. And then one day you'll get someone, you know, that's the way all this stuff happens. So I'm definitely going to be reaching out to Chris here pretty soon and see if I can get him over as a guest on the channel, but we'll keep playing through. If you guys haven't subscribed to the interview room, I tell you to go over and check out Chris McDonough's channel. He's a retired homicide detective and has a great panel of people on there every once in a while. Actually, every week he does a live stream.
Let's talk about some of the interesting things you're discovering about the timeline on Bryan. So, Dr. Kerri?
Someday all those will turn into one
because a couple of different topics have arisen here now. So first of all, when I was looking at mass murder for the database at Columbia Medical Center, one of the things that I was very interested in is the question of how many people did these offenders want to kill or expect to kill versus how many they actually killed, because as Ann and Greg and a few people are alluding to, they may not have expected to commit a mass murder. It might have been that they were targeting one person or two people, and there were people who unfortunately were collateral damage. And I think the weapon gives a little bit of a clue, because if you go into a setting with, you know, a semi-automatic weapon with loads of bullets or something, it's easier to see that you intended to rack up a high victim count. When you're dealing with something like a blade, it's hard to tell. And I have to say, you know, having pored over this case for a long time, the Kohberger case, I am suspicious that the intention was really to target one or two victims, and that Zaina and her boyfriend were probably people he did not expect to be awake, you know, kind of.
I'm starting to believe now that I go over the evidence and look through it, and now that they're scrubbing a lot of Kaylee's social media, I think the intention was Kaylee. So I'm going to go ahead and put that out there. I'm sticking with Kaylee was the intended target. I think that Kohberger had been stalking her for a while, and I think was surprised to find that Maddie and Kaylee were in bed together. That's why Maddie became essentially collateral damage. And then I think that Kohberger, allegedly Kohberger, heard something of Ethan and Xana downstairs, and they became collateral damage as well. So that's kind of my theory now scrubbing through all of this evidence and going through it. If that is the way, or if that is, if it's not Kohberger and he's, not the alleged person that did this, I think if there is a targeted killer, then that is the way that scenario would play out.
They just were sort of there, and then he felt he had to do something about it. And to the point that Kerri made about her father being covered in blood.
There is supposed to be more documents that are released this week. I have heard that, and the court is really fighting this gag order, but we as citizens have the right to know. So I don't know if this is going to get all overturned and all of the information will get out at some point. But I did hear that as well, that there are supposed to be new documents that do get released, and the court is fighting this gag order. And a lot of it is to keep an impartial jury in this case, because they don't want, the jury to be tainted. But I think that you can still get a fair enough trial with a jury. I mean, I in a lot of cases, these high profile cases, they still get a correct jury. I mean, shit, the survey might be this thick, but I think it is possible.
After the one murder is I've been very perplexed by the question of why it is that the witness who saw Bryan,
I know she
see him covered in blood,
but he followed her. He allegedly followed 3 of the girls. We know that on their Instagram and was following them for months. And she was posting very regularly on her Instagram. Let's see. Let me keep playing this.
Crime scene was found to be one of the bloodiest that the people who encountered it had ever seen. And why was he not covered head to toe in blood? The affidavit does not say that he was found to be, which makes me wonder, did he have a change of clothes? Did he wash in the bathroom? And I really want to understand that. How on earth did he avoid being covered in blood? Now, just to answer the question that initially started all this about the chameleon aspect, I think it's important to understand that and I've said this before, there's a difference between empathy and compassion. And I think with the more purely psychopathic people who don't have these odd schizoid elements that commit these offenses, there is an ability to read the feelings of other people enough to pretend to care about them, to lure them. For example, when we look at the work of somebody like Ken Lanning
in the chat right now,
here,
could just go down and
looked at
that
child abduction and abuse cases.
Likes.
One of the things that Ken will always point out is that there's a difference between the kind of offender who can gain the confidence of a child by saying certain things to them and luring them in a car, and the kind of person who has no social skills whatsoever, who is odd, that will simply snatch the child and pull them into the vehicle because they can't talk them into it. We see the same thing with adult offenders. I think we have to understand that the chameleon thing is easier when you're psychopathic and you can fake feelings, but you don't really have compassion. The odder.
On the contrary, Amber, there are a lot of people out there that think Bryan Kohberger is innocent. Again, everybody that we talk about on this channel, if they are in the middle of a case, I've always said they're innocent until proven guilty. But there are a lot of people, and everybody has a right to due process in this country. They can go through a trial and defend themselves. But there are a lot of people that think that Bryan Kohberger is dead innocent, does have no involvement in this, and did not commit these crimes. A lot of people think that. Again, I stand by what I say on this channel. I think the evidence is extremely strong. We're going to get into a lot of that tomorrow in tomorrow's presentation, so you're not going to want to miss my show tomorrow. But it just keeps adding up and adding up. And what I see, and I'm seeing the connections now through all the new documents that get released, it's very, it's starting to really add up. So.
Or more peculiar.
Chris, crazy. I think he wore a suit. One of those, like forensic suits.
Ones can't even do that. And that's where we see a lot more of the just grabbing somebody, tugging them into a van and dragging them off somewhere. But the interesting thing about the chameleon type that I've always been fascinated by, and I was considering writing about this.
Let me do this. I want to drop this for Miracle. Let me do this real quick. When you get a chance, Miracle, I want you to go to this link and I want you to read the timeline. Okay. I'm going to drop this. This is a fantastic timeline. Go through. Read that timeline. Maybe that I'm not swaying. I'm not trying to sway your decision, but maybe this can make you a little bit more conclusive on how you feel. Maybe you swing guilty. Maybe you swing innocent. But this is a pretty intense timeline.
Is that some of them almost seem to punish individuals for being pro-social and kind. So the idea is to say, oh, won't you help me to put my sailboat on top of the car, like Ted Bundy said. And when the person trusts and is willing to do a kind thing, that person has to be punished. So it's almost as if the idea is to say, you're an idiot for trusting me. You're a fool. And a way of saying, you invited this. It's your own fault. You let me in like a vampire. And so that I think there's an interesting thing about victim blaming and something about finding people foolish who let their guard down and are kind.
Superman
because the individual might have himself been a victim once upon a time of abuse for something where they felt like a fool for trusting someone. And now that's projected onto another person. And so that's an interesting thing about the chameleon type is they seem to prey on people that are not, savvy enough to tell that they are predatory. They have a disdain for that kind of person in particular, which is interesting. But anyway, so that's just my take on that, on the chameleon question.
I gotta wear my blue ones. My blue ones.
So let's talk about the correlation. I mean, we all know, and Dean, you can, validate this. The contact point. Dean, explain what the value of a contact point is in terms of one of the filters, so that we understand, and the audience understands the value of that through the investigative process. And then, Kerri, let's get into the timeline discoveries that you've come up with.
Crazy. His DNA is on the knife sheath. We're going to talk about that tomorrow. You're not going to want to miss tomorrow's stream. I did a lot of research and I came up with a lot of answers that I was like, wow. We're going to talk a lot about how long touch DNA stays on an object. We're going to talk a lot about touch DNA itself. We're going to talk a lot about circumstantial evidence. So you're not going to want to miss the show tomorrow. I promise you. And I think you're going to be wowed when tomorrow it's going to be 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Moon Vibes. I stream, if you look on my crawl on the bottom, every Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday nights at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Well, I think when we look at it, we're looking at actually 4 different things in tandem when we talk about that. And that is the victimology, the initial contact site, the crime scene itself, and then potentially disposal site. Now, those last 3 can collapse into one another and be all the same.
There's the link to tomorrow.
That initial contact site oftentimes is very much tied to our understanding of it can come from our understanding of the victimology. Why did that person connect with this offender at that point? And what were all the dynamics that went into why at this time? And what were the elements that were needed to get a victim to that particular point at that particular time? And what was the offender doing to also be able to come to that point at that time? So there's a lot of things that we're looking at that are working in tandem with one another, but it becomes very important to understand how
from Miracle
connected. And in this case with Bryan, for example, I think looking at BTK, it appears
super sticker,
at least from what we're hearing, that this initial contact site was coming from identified an extended period of time. And in BTK's case, the same thing,
Right,
that he
guys, I gotta use the
went
right
out,
really
identified
quick.
people, and
Right
then
back.
took the time to really kind of develop that and move to that. And I think we're seeing some indications of that as well with Bryan. I know when we first looked at your video that you had taken, Chris, that, you know, just looking at the environment itself, we were all just thinking, wow, this is what a place to be able to, for somebody to sit in so many different locations around there and just watch from a distance, let alone as we moved in closer and saw some of the potential there, especially on the backside of the house, for somebody to really be able to spend some pretty extensive time. There was a lot of cover there. So just some thoughts there.
Okay. Greg, Ann, did you want to add anything before Kerri?
I just wanted to quick add on to what Dean just said. Is it's always amazed me that it was done in the dark. There's no, of course, we don't have all of the crime scene yet, but that, how did he see? Did he wear something on one of those things on your head, that like a flashlight or something? Because somebody would have heard or seen it if a light went on. I just find that when you say the point of contact, you know, it had to be a dark room. And if he had them under surveillance, he must have known that it was going to be dark and that he worked best in the dark for some reason, whatever that meant to him. Of course, people are the most vulnerable
Sorry, guys.
when they're sleeping.
80
Yeah,
in here,
that's
guys.
a good point, Ann. I think that he spent a lot of time conducting surveillance there at that location. I think he spent a lot of time in that backyard in the middle of the night. I think there were times when he was inside the home while they were sleeping. I think he was as familiar with that house as they were, with the lights on or off. I think he was that well prepared to go in.
Interesting. So Kerri, what do you got for us?
Well, a couple things. When we're talking about the surviving roommate on the second floor, I'm going to not use her name out of respect and privacy for her. But there's a light in that living room in the Idaho house that said good vibes. It's very bright. It's neon. There's some thought by others that when Kohberger came back from what we believe was murdering Santa and Ethan, that light would have been behind him. So did she see him better than he saw her? Did that light blind him? And then if he had night vision on, like Ann was talking about, there's been a lot of speculation. Now we don't know. But if he went in with night vision goggles, could have those lights have blinded him? You know, so we don't know what the surviving victim saw. We know we speculate she obviously had to have been in shock, fearful for her life. You know, was she catatonic after this happened, or did she just write it off as like maybe a boyfriend leaving or some stranger? There was a lot of partying in the house, a lot of people coming and going. I mean, we just don't know right now. So we don't.
So wait a minute. I just want to add some commentary here to Kerri's theory. She said night vision goggles. Now, we haven't heard or seen anything in the evidence collecting, but this is just another interesting point. And you're going to think this stream is probably about a month ago they did this. Let's just say, all right, you think K-bar knife, okay? Let's say it wasn't bought at Walmart. I always thought that a K-bar knife could be bought at a military supply store. And there's plenty of them around near my house. And I was actually going to go in there today and see if they had one. K-bar knife. What else would they carry in there? Night vision goggles as well. That's where you would get that. So you have the U.S. Marine Corps K-bar knife, and let's just say that they do come across at some point some like night vision goggles or something like that. Just throwing this out there. I'm not saying that this is going to happen. Just saying, but it make a little bit more sense where that K-bar came from.
We don't know what she saw, and then she's a very important part of this case, so we all have to be very protective of her
true.
because this poor girl might have to go on the stand, both the girls.
Throwing theories and opinions out.
And then when Greg is talking about had he been in the home, well, did he know there were two other people in the home? Did he know there was a third floor? Like what? Like my dad wouldn't.
So there's some speculation about Amazon. There's been some information pulled off of eBay, and we know that he had a Walmart receipt. And I just was showing them earlier, if you were in here, I actually took walk to my, well, not walk. I drove over to my local Walmart today. I took a picture of their knife section. Now they didn't have a K-bar knife, but they had K-bar style knives in there. And you can buy K-bar knives on the Walmart website. I'm not sure what they sell in Pullman or Moscow, considering that that's probably an area where there's more hunters. So they may have those style of knives where you can just literally walk in and buy them. And that's what I was trying to figure out today, if I could do that. There is a Dick's Sporting Goods that's next to my Walmart. I was going to go in there, and I'm pretty sure that they do carry K-bars in there.
Never left anybody alive if they had seen him, you know. And then I was talking to Dr. Bricado, like, I'm under the belief, as the rest of us, that he really was only maybe after Maddie and Kaylee on the top floor, you know, or even maybe just Maddie. I think that's who he was fixated on. And then he ran into Xana and Ethan awake, at least Xana, because she was walking around getting DoorDash, reported on TikTok from the affidavit, maybe had her headphones on when she was on TikTok at 4 a.m. I mean, she maybe didn't even hear what was going on upstairs. You know, he's gone in, he's upstairs, did that quickly, quietly, comes down and runs into basically, you know, chaos. And then was he injured? Is that why he left?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's all speculation, but.
And I think, you know, one of the things that people have speculated about who are examining this case is thinking about whether this is the type of offender who killed totally unrelated people to mask the motive. Because there are offenders who do that, who will say, if I only kill this one person, it'll be obvious that, you know, that there was a connection to this person, so you kill multiple people to mask it. I don't know how I feel about that hypothesis, but some people have put it out there. But I did wonder if the group had any thoughts about this question of why he wasn't completely covered in blood when the witness saw him. The description did not include that. Was it dark enough that it wasn't obvious? Did he bring a change of clothes? When did he have time to wash up? Where are, you know, it's just odd to me. But I don't think anyone would deny that there must have been an outrageous amount of blood on his body.
Yeah, I think that
84 people watching.
Came down
almost
stairs
84 likes. They just need 3 more people to get up there. 86 people watching.
She described him as being in a ski mask and in dark clothing.
Let's smash that like button.
And I don't know that there was much lighting in that area. I don't think that she could see and tell. And I'm not sure that he saw her, because had he seen her, he may have taken her out as well, because he was on his way out, is my understanding.
Hey, Kerri, how are you? Welcome to the stream.
Certainly after killing 4 people, he's got to be
subscribe, smash the like button,
as well.
Hit that bell notification.
Having been almost in a trance state to get out of there, not necessarily being prepared to take out 4, intending on maybe 1 or 2, ends up killing 4, and now knows he's got to get out of there as soon as possible. So I don't know that he actually sees her, that last witness that was over, because she said she watches him walk out and then she shuts her door and locks it. So that's one of my questions about it. Does he even see her? If he did, why didn't he proceed to attack her as well?
Yeah, I mean, in my experience, if he is covered, you know, if he's wearing black, right? I mean, he's obvious.
If you guys, just for those, let's see, that want the most updated information on what documents they have, I'm going to drop this link in there. You can get all of the timeline, all of the information, all the documents that have been released. I do. I think he's relishing in this right now. If allegedly it is BK, I think he's loving all this attention right now. You guys can click on that link and that will give you all of the information. You can go through a virtual tour of 1122 King Road. If you click on that link and click timelines, that'll give you the full timeline, and they update it as it moves along when new information is put out. It's a really great source of information.
Obviously done all 4 of his victims. He murdered them, you know, horribly. And of course, every one of those moves
that's the link to tomorrow night's stream. If you guys click on that and you just hit the notify me button, that'll keep you notified when I go live. Tomorrow I'll be live at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's one of my regular nights. This is kind of an off night for me, but if you guys want to be in here on a Saturday night, I definitely can start streaming a lot more too.
Those stab wounds, and it's going to be an interesting report when we find out what exactly the counts are on each of the individual
He went upstairs first.
That will obviously, as we've talked about in the past, it will give us some intensity level in relationship to the first strike, and then thereafter. But I don't know if there would be a complete covering of him. I mean, you're going to certainly have cast off going in every direction, but the majority, a lot of times people forget that as the blade is coming down, the cast off is coming up, and it's going in a direction upward. I mean, I've been in crime scenes where you look down at the floor and there's hardly.
This is a very good, interesting thing, and I want people to really listen to this because this is a retired homicide detective, so he's seen it all. I'm going to back this up a little bit because I think this is interesting and it's very important for everybody to listen to this.
In my experience, if he is covered, if he's wearing black, right? I mean, he's obviously done all four of his victims. He murdered them, horribly. And of course, every one of those moves, those stab wounds, and it's going to be an interesting report when we find out what exactly the counts are on each of the individual victims. That will obviously, as we've talked about in the past, it will give us some intensity level in relationship to the first strike, and then thereafter. But I don't know if there would be a complete covering of him. I mean, you're going to certainly have cast off going in every direction, but the majority, a lot of times people forget that as the blade is coming down, the cast off is coming up, and it's going in a direction upward. I mean, I've been in crime scenes where you look down at the floor and there's hardly anything, but on the ceiling there's just streaks and streaks of problem. Okay, and so I think where we can qualify a possibility here is the fact that the surviving victim did have a bloody, what appeared to be a footprint in front of her door, and it did have some enzyme, traits. So that's probably, he was walking in either his own bleeding or the victim's blood, which would, to your point, Gary, would cause one question. The question is, well, how come we're not seeing, this other side of it? But I think the other side of this also is, I think there's a high probability I'm leaning towards she didn't see him, or he didn't see her. He didn't see her. I think that's more logical, and that gave the distance potentially for her to kind of, in fear, just kind of close the door and lock it. But that's
as
again, that's
in the chat tonight.
A theory, a hypothesis, but it certainly would help understand.
Well, another thought that has bothered me about this is whether the mask would have been worn during the killing also, or if it was simply to escape undetected. Because there are some offenders that part of what is attractive and gives them a sense of power is to look into the eyes of the person they're killing. They've chosen the knife because of the incredible intimacy. They know they're not going to leave the victim alive, and there's just something exciting about the person looking at them and being afraid of them and all of that. I just don't know if he would have had the
before we end the stream. We got about another half an hour on this, but before we end the stream, I want to play a video for you guys that I made at the very, very beginning of this, of this case. And I think that you're going to be very surprised with what I said. But we'll finish this.
During the attack. It makes me think of somebody like Ted Bundy, who would have worn the mask to inveigle himself into a place, but then would take it off during the killing. And I wonder what people's thoughts are on that, because if the psychology is anything like we're imagining, I mean, would he have wanted the victims to look at him and to feel powerful? Or any thoughts on that? It's been bothering me a little.
Kerri?
Real quick. So in the affidavit, the witness on the second floor survivor said that she noticed his bushy eyebrows, which we all now know Kohberger has. So that's a key statement that's going to be really important in this trial, that she got a good enough look at his face, report his bushy eyebrows. There's some thought that the mask maybe was like more like this, and maybe covered his face, his mouth.
So
some people said maybe he even had more like a pandemic type covering.
Let's get to 100
on,
likes. Come on.
almost to look more natural, or maybe it was around like this, but then you could still see his eyes and his eyebrows.
Hit that like button.
Come on, man. It's going to be very interesting to see what comes out in court. I want to put this one thought up here. This one from Vet Girl. What did BTK ever find joy in? What would have been his definition of happy? Any compassion or empathy towards anyone or anything? Kerri?
Well, I mean, I guess we've got
Have a good night. Thank you for stopping by.
But man, I would have swear to God the man loved my family. I would have done anything for us. Now, I always wonder, had we stumbled into his stuff, or, if I had been living at home in 2004 and when the police were playing cat and mouse with my father, would I have put my brain to it and figured it out and then got myself in trouble? Would I, be alive? But on this side, before he was arrested, God, that man loved us. I mean, he would do anything for us. I mean, he moved me up and back to college 1,000 times. He moved my stuff to Michigan when I got married. Immensely protective, immensely, just a massively huge.
We would have known someone by now.
Best friend in my life. Just love that man to pieces.
100%.
So it wasn't. I mean, I have detectives tell me, "Oh, it was all just a ruse and a lie, and your life was a lie." And I say, "No, it wasn't. He was my dad when he was with me. And you only know him now. You only know him from his crime scenes and his games and his confessions. You only know him in hindsight."
Yeah, you've been through a lot, and that, again, this goes into the study that Gary and Greg, many others, yourself, now, of understanding.
I agree.
The ability, the depth
so much
of the ability to wear this mask. I mean, and Bryan, BK is a perfect example of this. I mean, he's got a tremendous amount of pre-planning going on here to execute for human beings. And you wanted to say something. I see your mic coming on.
Well, I was just wondering what the Kerri or anyone thinks is going on with Bryan's family. Now that they have, certainly he's a suspect, obviously not proven in court yet, but you think that they have the same view of him, Kerri, as the loving son or the loving brother or whatever, and are shocked by what they are hearing?
Well, there's a big difference here, which is that my dad confessed the first night.
Right.
So
Frankie,
we were contacted. My
you.
family
Thank
was
you for
personally
gifting that
contacted by the
membership.
FBI the first night, just as kind of a letting us know for sure that they had found my dad's memorabilia underneath the floorboards. Basically, they told my dad they were going to tear up our house. And they used my mom and us as a wedge against my father to get him to confess. My father was playing games with them for about 5 hours. And they said, "Look, we know who you are. Tell us where it is, and we will not tear up that house and hurt Paula and the kids any worse." And so he said, "Okay, you got me. I'm BTK, and this is where the stuff is." And they didn't ever touch anything in our house except what they absolutely had to, which my dad told them. So in our case, my family knew night one he was guilty. Now, I was in denial, and I was off in my holes trying to alibi him and wrestling with it and grief and everything you can imagine from a perspective of mine. And I'm sure Kohberger's family's going through that, Plus, you also have a different dynamic of parents and child versus child and parents. So you have a lot of parental guilt. What did we miss? What did we not see? same for me is why couldn't I stop my father? That's going on. But in this case, I would imagine unless the police have been more open with Kohberger's family, I would think they probably have a lot of questions and are going to want to know everything going forward, the evidence, and be at the trial and things. That would be my speculation.
I often wonder what he and his father talked about on that.
I think they have a lot more evidence. We're going to hear about that in pre-trial.
And especially when they were pulled over.
Yeah. Kerri, I've got a question for you. When were you allowed to begin dating?
Oh my God. Well, this is more my mom's doing. So my dad was sort of kind of like the wild man and let me be wild outside and get into.
About another 20 minutes on this video. And then I'm going to play a short video that I made back on December 25th. And I want to compare my predictions as to what we know about the evidence now. And it's pretty shocking what I thought back then. But let's finish this up. We'll do that. This is another marathon stream, guys. You guys are really hanging in. We're almost at 3 hours. Wow. Long shows.
All sorts of trouble and tomboy. And my mom was very strict. Like I couldn't get my ears pierced till I was 16. I was allowed to go on a homecoming at like 15, 16, but I had to be chaperoned. Mm-hmm. So it was, but then my father was really, we were talking earlier about my husband, we're divorced now, but he went camping with me in 2000 and my dad was very persnickety and controlling. And that was the only time my then husband went camping with him. But my dad actually had opinions about the man I married and wasn't sure he was like the best guy for me. Like my dad was very much do what I say, don't do what I do in hindsight. So my father had a cuss jar. Like we had a cuss jar in our kitchen and we got in trouble for cussing. That's what I grew up under. And then I found out all this stuff.
You guys have to understand that a probable cause affidavit is just enough details to give probable cause to arrest someone. You got to think when that probable cause affidavit came out, and there's been months in between that. So this case is still being investigated on. That's why you're seeing more documents come out. And they had started getting documents out in December. So they are already on to things. And, you're going to see a lot more information come out. The pretrial hearing is going to really outline the full case because that's when they go to the judge and they're going to argue and say, this is all the evidence that we have against BK. That's why we think he's responsible for this particular crimes. And then the judge will hear from the defense and then will make their decision to go to trial. To me, the evidence is very, very strong and it gets stronger every single day with, more evidence that comes out.
Stuff about my father, and I'm like, are you kidding me? Seriously? I'm getting in trouble for cussing, Dad.
My email?
Did he have any rules for you in terms of when you started to date? Was he a real stickler on time, when you're supposed to get home, or what kinds of things to be concerned about or look for your own particular safety?
Yeah, well, I mean, we had the general curfew, but there was an interesting conversation I had talked to Dr. Mercado and I think Ann about. When I was around 16, I was walking in with my father to Sarah's Roebuck for car maintenance. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, my father starts talking to me about being safe. He's like, well, you're getting older now and you're learning to drive. You're going to be out on your own and you need to learn that sometimes people do bad things, usually men. And he said, you need to, when you approach your car at night and it's dark, you need to look for somebody in the back seat because they like to hide back there. I still sometimes do that. And then
Opinionated Idiot.
Hello.
Hello.
And this is a boy named Phil.
Hey, how are you?
How are you, Bryan?
Good.
So all the good, thank you. All the people that are thinking that BK is innocent, which who knows, he may be. One thing that's hard to overcome for me is how nobody is standing out for his innocence.
Yeah. Usually, any type of person, and I think that's a great thing that you brought up, And I think this has been talked about too in some of the media, the mainstream media. And, you know, again, I want to make sure that everybody understands here, my callers, the people that watch this channel, and I've said this 1,000 times, everybody is entitled to their innocent until proven guilty. They're given their due process in our court system. We can have our opinions. We can, you know, hash those out in the chat. This is what this is supposed to be, you know, an interactive community. So I wanted to state that first.
Oh, no.
Sure.
I'm absolutely not putting anyone down.
100%.
I love opinions. We need people to question everything, because it could be one of us that are falsely accused one day.
Of course.
So we need people. But the fact that nobody is coming out on his behalf, even his
parents,
the first attorney that he had said, well, he hasn't been proven guilty. You know, he's innocent until proven guilty. Nobody is saying he's innocent. And
right.
Can you imagine if it was you
yeah.
or one of your loved ones? Like, I mean, I can't imagine. My son, he just started college, and he's a little younger than him. But if he was accused of this, I would be on
enraged
everywhere.
My son didn't
Absolutely.
I mean, look at Gonzalez's father when this first happened. And he was on every news program, like freaking out, you know, fighting for his daughter, fighting for those victims in that house. And, you know, and that's funny that you said that, because I was actually going to talk about this tomorrow night. No one's coming out and saying anything, you know, and you're not even hearing leaks in the media, and the people that they've tracked down that have known BK have even said, oh, he's weird. He was strange. He did weird things. He degraded women. You know, no one's saying like he's a good guy.
Yeah. And even if he was a bad guy,
sure.
Like being a bad guy, like a POS, you know, I don't want to cut. Well,
sure. It's okay.
A piece of shit, right? He could be a piece of shit, but to be a murderer and to do this horrible crime is way separate, right?
Right.
And not nobody. And he comes from a relatively, what I would think is a normal family.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it's just crazy. But I just wanted to say that. But I'm glad everybody's on there sharing opinions. That is awesome, because we need people's opinions, because this is what keeps our system honest.
Of course. And it gives good, healthy feedback. I think streams like this and channels like this can bring a community of people together from all walks of life. And the thing is, here's the thing that we have in common. You know, we all enjoy, I mean, sick as enough as it is. I think it's just those curiosities. And I think people are really captivated. And this has pulled a lot of people into this, like 4 innocent kids that had no clue this was coming.
Nothing.
And then, you know, honestly, I thought it was going to go cold, you know, and they weren't going to have a person of interest. And it's just that curiosity.
And these law enforcement officers were on it.
100%.
I mean, the fact that they didn't leak anything was awesome. I mean, they kept everything to the belt, and they kept an eye on him.
Mm-hmm.
And they just did a fantastic job, in my opinion.
Yeah, they did a really good job of masking to the public of what was going on, because they knew who it was. They didn't want to scare the potential suspect BK out of the area. And you know, now that we find out that and the chief's name is slipping. Is it Fry? Chief Fry? His last name's slipping my mind right now. But to know that he had FBI training, that he spent weeks at an FBI seminar and met a lot of FBI agents. And that's why you think he had them so quick on this, and having that connection probably helped save so much time in this case to have the FBI come in and investigate this.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Good.
I think everyone did a great job.
Absolutely.
But okay. And by the way, there's an E at the end of my name. It's Christine.
I'm so sorry.
Okay. Hey, have a good night.
All right. Thanks for calling.
Hey, and by the way, you did mention that you're spreading your channel. It's not just going to be about the Idaho cases. That I think it's a great idea.
Sure.
I think most of your listeners will think that too. You're doing a great job, kid.
I appreciate it.
Keep it up, kiddo.
Thank you.
All right, have a good night.
You too. Bye-bye. That was really nice. All right. We'll keep playing through this. Thank you, Christine, for calling. I have your name correct now, but great call. Appreciate your perspective, and anybody can call in anytime. But let's play through this.
And he says you can take your key, and he showed me how to take the key and use it as a weapon, something I've still known to do. He talked about how somebody might hide under an elevated car and slice your ankle. Then he goes on and physically shows me like how to fight off an attacker. Now he didn't wrap himself around me, but he physically showed me like how to knee somebody in the balls and how to fight them off. And he said, you fight like a wildcat. He said, you just fight for your life. You scream and you fight for a wildcat. Okay, so I'm 16. Then in 2005, I find out he's BTK. Then in 2016, I found out in that very parking lot before the Oteros in 73, he tried to kidnap a young bank teller and tried to get her in his car. This was before the Oteros. So it's 2016, and I'm realizing it's the same as that parking lot where he's telling me how to fight off somebody. And he literally probably was remembering that, warning me about somebody like him and also getting off on it.
Mikey, have a good night. Hope to see you tomorrow night.
That is my life.
Was he affectionate toward you and your brother?
Not real verbal, like not very, like I love you was hard, but he would hug. Like there's a lot of photos of us like sitting next to each other, but not overly affectionate with us. He sort of wanted to keep his space, but he was very loving with my mom. Like they would dance in the living room and be dorks and kiss and hug and, you know, stuff that grossed out us.
I just bought it actually. It's a Fire HD.
Thank you.
Amazon.
I want to get to this question that keeps popping up. Don't worry, I'm going to help you. Gary, and
don't worry, I'm going to kill you.
This is obviously Bryan when he says it to one of the victims and anybody else that wants.
Don't worry, I'm going to kill you.
This is way above my pay grade here. This is deep.
Well, I think he's just trying to relieve her. She's obviously concerned. There's been an attack. Maybe he's already attacked the boyfriend, and she is full of anxiety. She sees what's going on, or at least a perception of what's happening. Very concerned and emotional, and he's simply trying to diffuse that level of anxiety to control her and her reaction, rather than to fight, resist, or to run out. I think he's able to control her for the moment until he can finish what his intention is.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. That is not an unusual statement to hear from someone that's going to kill someone or rape someone. I've certainly heard that from victims that survived. So I think it's to calm them down, and then he's got more control. I agree with Greg.
Right. I think it's an example of the kind of chameleon process we talked about, where he knows something that a person would say who is compassionate to calm someone down. And I also think if Kohberger is indeed the killer, that there's a perverse double meaning because he was somebody who indeed was studying to become somebody who helped people, who were victims of this kind of thing. So that
ideally, I'm an Apple guy. I wish I could have got an Apple tablet, but they're just, for what I need is just simple note taking. I need a good note taking app that doesn't have fucking pop-ups on it. If you know anything about that, O'Brien, I would love that too. Let's finish out this stream.
That when you think about somebody studying criminology saying, I'm here to help you, it has a perverse double entendre to it that I'm not suggesting is conscious, but it's a little twisted when you think about it that way, because that in essence is what is so perverse about this personality, is the idea you have somebody who's studying to become a helper, but who in fact is perpetrating, which gets right back to the perverted thing, the perversion of kindness you were talking about, Kerri. I'm here to show you how to not be victimized in a place where you take a victim. And I think that having studied this phenomenon of this, perverting and otherwise kind moment or something like that, I think it gets right back to that compartmentalization and splitting thing that we keep talking about. Because sometimes with people like this, there is a longing to bring together the two sides of the self, right? So you start to bring into the moments where you're trying to be kind or you're connecting to the person you idealize, you're showing them what you really are. Sort of like, Kerri, your father having materials right under the floorboards so that at any moment the family that didn't know he was BTK could find out because it was just under their feet. Or the example I always give is Gary Ridgway, the serial killer, bringing his wife out to the field to make love, where a few yards away was the festering corpse of a victim, because of the fantasy that perhaps she would discover what he was, and the bridge would be there would be a bridge in the split. And Kerri, you also talked about your father sometimes turning into BTK for just a split second at home when he would lose control, all of that. So I think it's interesting to think about what is it that sort of makes a person weave in and out of those sides of the self. My experience is it has to do with loss of control, which gets right into what Greg and Ann are saying about this guy showing a little glimpse of the other part of the fragmented self. It came when he was scared and out of control. And then all of a sudden, he turns into Mr. Nice Guy for 2 seconds, because that's the technique he uses out in the world when he's not Mr. Killer, but Mr. Powerful, right? So you resort to it. That's what he knows how to do. And it's very interesting to think about those triggers. That actually gets us right to the point that Chris had raised about the timeline you found, Kerri, because one of the things I'm hoping when you walk through it that we could all talk about is what the life trigger was that pushed him over the edge. If Kohberger is guilty, because Greg and Ann and Dean, I'm sure you'd agree, in many of these offenders, we identify these stressors that sort of come in their life right before they go out and start to kill. Kerri, I think in your father's case, it was like loss of a job. That's insecure. So maybe, Chris, if it's okay, maybe Kerri could give her excellent timeline that she's patched together.
Absolutely. Feel free.
Right before we get to the
and one other thing also, I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. We all know what the affidavit says. Okay? And we don't know if it's BTK or if it's Bryan saying it or if it's Ethan saying it. I mean, there's a lot of things out there, right? We don't know.
Guys, I'm gonna end this. It's only got about another 10 minutes, but I do want to end at about 11:30 because it's going to be 3-hour stream, and I do have things to do tomorrow. If you guys want to catch the rest of the last 10 minutes of it, I'll drop the link here in the chat. You can go check it out after the stream. But I do want to end at 11:30 because I've been on here for 3 hours, and it's another marathon stream. But what I wanted to do before I leave is play a video that I did back on, what's the date? And I just had the date too. Hang on a second. Let me pull this video up. Okay, let me check the date, and then we're going to wrap up the stream. Okay, this is a video that I made on December 25th, 2022. Okay. So listen to my predictions, and let's see how close I was so far. Of course, everything is just circumstantial or an opinion, but let's play this.
4 has been a tough year. Our sales are down, our growth is down.
Sonny, I rushed you.
It's been over a month since 4 University of Idaho students were found stabbed to death on November 13th, 2022 at a home in Moscow, Idaho. But so far, police say... Thing you remember too is the case was very fresh, and I did not pronounce a lot of their names correctly. So suspect or suspects have not been identified in this horrible crime. The victims in this murder investigation, Madison Mogul, Kaylee Conglavis, and Xana Canoodle, were roommates. Consalvis. Come on. While the fourth victim, Ethan Chapin, did not live there, but was dating Canoodle. There were 2 other roommates that lived in the home, but they were not attacked, and the police say they believe they were asleep through the murders. A lot of people are asking why. Why haven't we heard anything? Why hasn't a suspect or suspects been named? Why hasn't anyone been arrested yet? Well, the case is complex, and it takes time to process evidence. The police don't want to make a mistake and blow the case. They need to be 100% sure. With all that surrounding this case and how high profile it's been, there have been a lot of theories as to what happened. Thanks, guys. Suspect or suspects that did this. All right, let's see.
One
of the theories is it's a new serial killer. Recently, 2 unsolved murders in Washington and Oregon recently stand out. I was wrong on that. Similar to this case. Those crimes happened on the same date as the Ohio murders. It was the 13th. and they fell on a weekend. The houses involved could be watched from the back with coverage from the woods. All houses have access via sliding glass door entry, and all crimes happen during or in around the 3 a.m. time frame. No DNA or DNA matches have been found in any of the cases so far. Another theory is it's a copycat serial killer. Someone like a Ted Bundy copycat. Maybe. They may have been obsessed with Ted Bundy or watched too many movies. The hit theory is something else that's been questionable. Maybe they or someone in their family was involved in a bad business deal or in crime activity. Another plausible theory is the jealous or angry ex-boyfriend theory. They just couldn't stand to be without one of the girls, and in a fit of rage, decided to kill. There's been the obsessed student theory, same as the theory above. They just couldn't stand to be without one of the girls.
Could be it.
Someone that tried to ask one of these girls out before and they were
That
rejected.
could be it.
Pissed them off, so they decided to get revenge by killing them. The more than one killer theory certainly could be plausible. Murdering 4 people on your own would be a very hard task, so it would be more logical that 2 suspects were involved. The 2 roommate theory, they were there. They had something to do with it, or they knew the suspect or suspects that were involved. Another theory that's been thrown around is the maintenance worker theory. They saw the girls before, became obsessed, knew the layout of the house and surrounding areas so they could escape easily. To me, it seems a little far-fetched. It's too much like something.
All
out
right,
of a
let's
movie.
hear my...
Here's one of the theories that are wild and weird. The frat theory. It was just some type of satanic group ritual killing. Then that takes us back to the white Hyundai Elantra theory. We've heard a lot about this car, this mystery car during this case. Seems that there's a lot of evidence pointing towards this car and where to find it. A lot of the theory is that this is the suspect's car, or maybe the police already know who the suspect or suspects are, and the person or people inside that white Elantra have much needed details as to what happened that evening. Now I'll give you my opinion, and I'm purely just speculating, but there have been a few theories that I personally pull towards. The most rational is an ex-boyfriend or friend, and the serial killer theory. If I was to profile the suspect that did this, these would be some of the traits and characteristics of that suspect. Number 1, the suspect knew these girls or had an interaction with them before. This is not a stranger. Number 2, the suspect that did this is very smart and did a significant amount of recon on the house. They methodically planned out this crime. They studied movements, who came and went, and what times people were home and left. Number 3, the suspect came in on foot and made sure that the vehicle they drove was as far away from the home and it was out of reach of any cameras or people that could see it. Number 4, it was a targeted attack. It was definitely a crime of rage and passion to fulfill a fantasy. Number 5, it was personal. The suspect used a knife. The suspect wanted to be close to the victim or victims while inflicting their rage. Now, if I was an FBI profiler and I had to draw a sketch of the suspect, here's what they would look like. I believe it's a large male with great strength, either 20 through their 30s, extreme introvert, who is bullied or rejected by women throughout their life. They're an outdoorsman, someone that likes to hunt and is very experienced with knives. They have an obsession with killing and has likely killed or attempted to kill before. They may have an uncontrollable temper or have random bursts of energy and strength. They abuse drugs and alcohol. They have a very obsessive compulsive personality. They planned everything down to its last detail in this crime. I know we all like to speculate, but we truly don't know because we don't have privilege to all the evidence in this case. What are your thoughts? Do you think this was someone the girls knew?
This video got no views.
Leave your comments.
It's a great video.
I'd love to
hear
your
my
feedback.
prediction.
Before we leave, please make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell notification on this channel. And like always,
that's it, guys.
Talk live and talk loud. See you on the next one.
That video got no views. My predictions were very, 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 very... That was on December 25th. That's pretty good. I'm going to drop the stream for tomorrow, guys. Make sure to go in, hit the notify me button. We'll get this chat up to 100 people again tomorrow. 3 hours. You guys are rock stars. 3 hours long, and there's still 80 people watching. That's fantastic. I love all of you. I love all my channel members. I love all my moderators. You guys are the best YouTube fans in the world. You support me. You're here for me. I love all of you. You make this so much worth it. I love it. I love it so much. Guys, click that link for tomorrow. I dropped it in the chat. Hit the notify me
button. Let's get this up tomorrow to 100 people in that chat. I want consistently 100 people watching every night. And then when this channel grows, it's going to be 500. It's going to be 1,000. It's going to be 2,000. It's going to be 3,000. But I need all of your help. Amber says I was pretty on point. I was. It's pretty crazy. 95 likes. You guys are awesome. 95 likes. I love it. Okay, guys. With that being said, I'm going to end the stream for this evening. I love all you. I hope to see you all here tomorrow. I will be back, I promise. And I hope you all will be too. Have a wonderful rest of your night. Have a great Sunday for tomorrow. And we're at 98. If we can just get to 100 likes before I get off, it would be great. Are we at 99? No, we're at 98. I need 2 more people. 2 more people. Let's take a look. Can we do it? 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 I'm going to stay for like 2 more seconds before we go. Before we go. We got 100. We got 100, guys. All right. You guys all have a good night. I love all of you. I will see you all tomorrow. I'm out. Peace. Good night. Bye. Hey everybody, thank you for checking out this video. If you like the content here today, make sure to click on one of these videos up here. I would appreciate it. And before you head out, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Turn on that bell notification so every time I drop a new video or go live, you guys will know. Thanks.